Welcome back, and what a delight to have back with us. Well, it's been a while since we've had Gary Bauer with us. Gary heads up, he's president of the American Values, and he himself actually ran for president. And we have a lot to talk to him about. So, Gary, good to see you again, my friend. How you doing?
Good. Great to be with you. Congratulations on that fantastic award.
Well, thank you very much. I was hoping to bump into you at the NRB, but you must be a pretty busy guy.
You may have seen there's a few things going on in Washington, D.C., where, for reasons only God can explain, I've been sentenced to spend most of my life. So we're slugging away here trying to represent and defend family, faith, and freedom as we have been doing for many, many years.
Thank you, Gary, for doing that, and you do it so very, very well. Well, you're very savvy on the political things. What do you think about this campaign overall? It seems to be so different than anything we've ever seen.
The word "yikes" comes to mind. As a Reagan conservative, I can't say that I'm particularly enthralled or thrilled by the tone of the campaign. I mean, let me say the obvious first of all, which is that I believe if we continue the policies of the last 8 years, the country will be in deep, deep trouble. So I'm certainly no fan of either of the leading liberals that are fighting in one party to follow President Obama. But in the Republican Party, I've personally have endorsed Senator Cruz. I think we've had, on my side, a lot of good candidates. But I certainly regret the tone, the rhetoric of the campaign. I think Mr. Trump has contributed to that quite a bit, but now the other candidates are doing it too. And let me just say, we've come a long way from the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and I got depressed over the weekend seeing some of the rhetoric and cheered myself up by going online and watching some old Ronald Reagan speeches where, you know, he was a strong leader, but never got into the kind of mud that we're seeing so much these days. Well,
that's kind of what I want to talk about. Do you think that Ronald Reagan would probably just walk off one of these debates, given the fact that the cannibalism among Republicans is what it is?
I think Ronald Reagan would be deeply disappointed, and I do think that if the process when he was running had been anything like this, he probably would have walked off the stage, or at least called out his opponents and asked for a little bit of civility. Now, look, Ronald Reagan could get mad, and there's plenty to get mad about, and Ronald Reagan could get animated. There's plenty to be animated about. But when you're throwing charges back and forth about one guy's makeup and the other guy's false tan, and one guy sweats too much and the other guy does this, it just seems to be way beneath the dignity of the office, number one. But more importantly, doesn't seem to fit the times we're in. I really think the whole American experiment in self-government and constitutional government and liberty under God is up for grabs, and that would call, in my mind, for a more adult conversation than the one we seem to be having right now.
One of the elephant in the room is Donald Trump, and for believers, and I'm still scratching my head why so many Christians are just going for him so early, and even most recently, Mike Huckabee now endorsing him. And yet he's not firm on Planned Parenthood. We haven't heard one definitive policy from him, statement yet on anything. They're all very powerful one-liners. I'm just puzzled how Christians are saying he's the man. Can you tell me why?
Well, this is one Christian that's endorsed Senator Cruz, and there are probably, you know, some fellow believers who disagree with me on that. Christian conservatives are divided among all these candidates.
Uh-oh. Okay. We're talking to Gary Bauer. He's with the American Values. And by the way, I got a little bit of a Skype issue there. We'll try to get it corrected here in just a second. His website is ouramericanvalues.org. ouramericanvalues.org. And let me encourage you to check it out. Now, I've worked with Gary on several campaigns in his organization. the way they go about garnishing support for various candidates is very, very unique. And he runs a terrific organization. He personally has endorsed Ted Cruz, but he also, representing his organization, talks about the big picture. And as soon as we get reconnected with him, I want to talk to him about the importance of the big Super Tuesday debate tomorrow, because it's about delegates, folks. Everybody thinks it's about the popular vote. It's not. It's about delegates. And then delegates will end up being electoral voters, which is part of the Electoral College. And that will determine really who wins the election. Twice I've been elected to the Electoral College, but I never got the chance to cast my vote because Oregon never went with the Republican, which is kind of interesting. So we'll reconnect with Gary Bauer in just a moment, but check out his website, ouramericanvalues.org. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, welcome back. We finally reconnected with our friend Gary Bauer. He's president of American Values. And again, let me encourage you, to go to his website, ouramericanvalues.org, and support what they do. The way they get involved in campaigns is one of the most unique in the whole country. And I can tell you that they do an excellent job. So let me encourage you. Go to his website, become a part of his emails and things that he does there to inform you. Again, ouramericanvalues.org. Gary, let me jump right to it. Tomorrow is Super Tuesday. There's 155 delegate votes in the state of Texas. Cruz better win that one. Do you think he will?
I do think that Senator Cruz will win in Texas. Now, keep in mind, it's not winner take all. So certainly other candidates will win delegates too. But I think there's a real shot that Senator Cruz will do extremely well, might even win by double digits. We'll see. But that looks like one of the few states where he's going to be able to do that. Perhaps he might be able to do the same in Arkansas and/or Oklahoma. In most of the other states, it looks like Trump will win unless recent controversies over the weekend bring him down. And there doesn't appear to be any state right now that is going to vote tomorrow that Senator Rubio is going to win. So there's a momentum here. If you had to be one candidate, you would want to be Donald Trump because he appears to be in the driver's seat.
As Rubio, I mean, he since the debate last week through the weekend, he's done nothing but go after Trump. I'm not sure if that's good strategy. Why do you think he's doing that?
Well, you'll notice that he's attempting to mock Donald Trump. He's the criticisms he's making, and you're right, they're pretty nasty and sort of personal, the sort of thing that Donald Trump has said about other candidates. But at least Marco's doing it with a smile. Now, I would tend to agree with you. I'm not sure he's helping himself very much. But there's a feeling by some, that the only way you can bring down somebody like Trump is by sort of sarcasm and poking fun at him. I'm just worried that by the time these guys get done slashing each other, none of them are going to be able to defeat Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. And as I said before, I think that would be a disaster from our foreign policy to our lack of economic growth to the attack on religious liberty and the sanctity of life. These are incredibly important things for the future of the country. And I hope that all the conservative alternatives aren't damaged goods by the time they get done with this free-for-all that they're in right now.
Well, again, from what I'm understanding, the Democrats are just really enjoying this mudslinging on the right because it plays right into their playbook, and that is whoever emerges as being the candidate, the nominee, they'll just get into a further mudslinging contest with that person in an attempt to sour the American voter from even voting. I mean, that's how they win. So if it's Trump, you know that they're doing their research on Trump. And if it's Cruz or Rubio, they're doing the research on everybody. But there was an article out this morning that shows that Trump might beat Hillary even in New York.
Well, that's exactly right. And interestingly, that's one of the reasons I think people are voting for him in the Republican primaries, including some Christians. People want a winner this time. They want somebody that actually can take the ball across the goal line in November. And for a variety of reasons, large percentages of Republican primary voters and caucus goers think that that individual is Donald Trump. We'll have to wait and see, obviously. But and I'll tell you, there's something else out there for those who want to be a little bit more positive, and that is in all these early races, the number of people showing up on the conservative side is up dramatically from 4 years ago and 8 years ago, where on the Democrat liberal side, the vote has dropped off dramatically. I think the Democrats in South Carolina this weekend got 175,000 fewer voters even participating than in 2008, and around 175,000 additional voters participated on the Republican conservative side. So I think people are ready for a change more to right of center than the sort of far left governance we've seen the last 8 years. But at the end of the day, the conservative side's going to have to close ranks and get over the bitterness that we obviously see out there, or we're just going to get 4 more years of what we've had the last 8.
Let me jump ahead and I'll come back to that, but let me ask you a Chris Matthews hardball question. What's the difference?
Please, no.
What's the difference between socialism and the Democratic Party, in your opinion?
Well, look, the reason it's such a tough question is that nobody can find a difference. I think the difference between a Hillary Clinton and a Bernie Sanders is that he admits he's a socialist and she refuses to admit she's a socialist. But their policies are virtually identical. He's just a little bit more brazen about it and a little bit more rhetorically tough about it. But look, they both want bigger government, higher taxes. They want to punish successful people. They want to use the power of government to take money from somebody that's earned it and give it under the force of law to somebody that's going to end up voting for them. They both have fairly weak foreign policies. There really isn't that much difference between those two candidates.
Yeah. All right, let me come back to something that's dear to all of us. Why do you think the faith community overall was silent when the House of Representatives passed the budget and gave the president everything he wants for his remaining term in office, which included the full funding of Planned Parenthood in the light of those videos, and then to come back and pass a bill to defund Planned Parenthood? I mean, this is the kind of politics that stinks so bad that nobody wants to get involved.
Well, it does. And look, I don't want to be the guy that's giving the defense of people on Capitol Hill. What they would say is that the president made it clear he would veto a budget that didn't have that funding in it. And most members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, were afraid that shutting the government down would get blamed on them again, and going into the election year, that would make the difference in the election. I disagree with their analysis, but I understand their worldview on this. I'm more upset, quite frankly, that not enough people from the pulpit, not enough pastors and priests and other religious leaders talked about this from the pulpit and activated their congregations to speak up about it. Look, whether you're pro-life or pro-abortion, the American taxpayer and faith-based voters should not be forced to pay for abortions. That seems really clear to me, and yet that's exactly what's happening when the funding goes to Planned Parenthood. If they want to provide abortions, they ought to come up with their own money to do them. They shouldn't be taking money out of the billfolds and pocketbooks of hardworking Americans.
Gary, we're fighting as broadcasters, we're fighting the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And I don't know if you're aware, but the FCC is now threatening arbitrarily to take away LPTV licenses and sell those frequencies for a profit to wireless companies without warning, without compensation, without accommodation, with nothing. Just take them away, ourselves included, along with any channel above 21. and 63% of those licensees are Christian. Now, if the government gets away with that, that is one of the greatest wholesale cuttings of free speech in America that we've ever seen. And it's not just necessarily an idea. This is on our doorstep. It could happen March 29th. An attack against our ability to broadcast the gospel. Have you ever seen anything you think you'd ever see this in our day?
Well, it's heartbreaking that it's even being discussed. But I have to say, it seems to me to be almost the inevitable conclusion or road that we're on, and we've been on for a long time. There is a full-throated attack against religious liberty in this country and against certain types of speech, as we've seen, where words and sentences out of political correctness are outlawed, or anybody that utters them are blackballed or lose their jobs. We see it over and over again. And certainly we've seen the attack on religious liberty in the churches, the attack on the right of Christian business people to decide whether they want to participate or not, or cater a same-sex wedding. This is all accelerated in the last 8 years. And it's a big deal in this election because the next president is going to appoint hundreds and hundreds of federal judges and probably appoint at least 3 more Supreme Court appointments. So I hope there's not a Christian out there that thinks they can stay home in this election, regardless of who the nominees are. We could wake up in very short order and find that our most cherished freedoms, including the freedom of speech and freedom of a religion, have disappeared right in front of our eyes. So I think the country's on the edge of an abyss, and that's why this election cycle is probably the most important election in our lives.
Do you think that the Christian electorate will get out and vote? You've seen the numbers. I've worked the numbers, especially in the state of Oregon. Dave Crow from Restore America is pretty much a champion on sharing these numbers. But the bottom line is, if the Christians who are eligible to vote would vote, and those who are eligible to register and vote, the combination of those two, you can sway just about any election in the any state and in any county.
Well, that's right. And look, it's I think we have to admit this. It's not just that they have to vote, but they got to vote their values. They've got to vote taking into consideration what their faith teaches them about a whole group of issues. And I think this is one of the reasons that people are worried. If a Christian voter doesn't look or doesn't act or conduct themselves any differently than a secular voter, one has to ask, can you really call them a Christian voter? So I think it's extremely important that men and women of faith do participate, do get into the public square and take part in the process, but they also hopefully will not only take part in it, but they'll ask themselves what a Christian voter ought to do faced with the choices they will be faced with coming in these primaries and then finally in November.
One thing about Ted Cruz is so significant, and that is that he's argued most of these key points that we talk about. I don't know, it hasn't really been known that much, but he has argued some of the most significant cases as it relates to Christian values in America before the Supreme Court, and has won. And yet we don't hear much about that.
Well, you're exactly right. There's a whole list of reasons that I endorse Senator Cruz, and one of them is exactly that. This guy is brilliant. He's argued before the Supreme Court. He has knocked down the arguments of liberal Supreme Court justices, and he's prevailed in a number of these cases. He also took the lead in opposing the Iranian nuclear deal, which I think we all know is a total disaster. He brought together people into his office to try to work out the strategy. Unfortunately, as we saw, the president was able to bend enough arms that he won on that. But I think Senator Cruz, whether it comes to foreign policy, the sanctity of life, religious liberty, Second Amendment rights, the right to own and bear arms, he's been, without exception, correct on those issues. And I still think is the closest candidate to being a Reagan conservative. But obviously the voters will make that determination over the next few days and weeks.
Do you have any confidence that the Senate will kick the can down the road on the president's nominee to replace Justice Scalia?
I do believe on this one that the Republican leaders in the Senate and the rank and file will hold their ground and continue to say that President Obama is not going to get another appointment to the Supreme Court. I wish they would get more specific about why, and I think the reason why is that if he puts one more appointment on the court, just looking at his previous appointments, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are both going to be in tremendous jeopardy and at risk. And, I think they ought to make that argument. I think they ought to take it to the electorate, because I believe the American people care about the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, and they would side with Republicans in the Senate to not confirm another Obama appointee to the court. I think they also understand that if they caved on this and did put another Obama appointee on the court, I literally believe that would be the end of the National Republican Party. I just think it would cause such an explosion at the grassroots that the party would be finished as a major political party in the United States. So they will come under a lot of attack from the media. The president and the left will beat them up over this for the next 10 months, but I believe they will hold their ground.
Well, the other thing is, it's been said that Mitch McConnell wants to remain he wants to remain
leader of the Senate.
Leader of the Senate. So there's a personal reason. On the other side, they're saying Paul Ryan, no matter what, probably will not get reelected as Speaker. He just hasn't been able to manage the House in the direction that it should go, even though they're threatening now to look at the president on some legal issues about executive orders. That's almost too little too late. But it would seem to me that Paul Ryan's in trouble, and Mitch McConnell would lose as well if he went ahead and allowed for a vote.
Well, there's certainly an uprising around the country at the grassroots, and I think they're finally getting the message from Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you. You are a delight, Gary, and thank you for all that you do. Again, let me say to our viewers and listeners, go to ouramericanvalues.org and track what they have. Gary's got an incredible resource there at the website. Support their organization. It's amazing how they get involved in campaigns. It's very unique, and it works very powerfully. Thank you, Gary. Let's stay in touch and see how this goes. Okay, friend?
Great to be with you. Keep praying for the country, and don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Okay, you bet. God bless you. All right. Again, ouramericanvalues.org. That's the website, ouramericanvalues.org. And when you go there, make sure you take advantage of all the information and support it. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.